Hey, my name is Nikhil Karnik, and today I'll be demoing to you how do you use your PySpark code remotely and then connect to a Datastax cluster and run your code. So to do that, what I've done is on the AWS cloud, which was easily accessible to me, where I could create my Datastax cluster. So I have created a cluster over here, and in my cluster, I have the core Cassandra, which is powered by search, analytics, and graph. And then what I've done is I have basically created a jump server. Jump server is the place from where I'm going to run my PySpark code. So you as a developers, you guys may not see the screen, but this is like our operations center. We call it as an ops center. This is primarily the operations team has access to it. So as you can see here, there are three nodes which the operations team would have created for you as developers, and you guys would be connecting to this cluster. So the thing I wanted to show you here is that there are three nodes here. If you observe the status column, there is, it says search analytics with graph, right? And then another node with search analytics and graph, and we have one more node over here. What you see the status, if you observe it carefully, it has search analytics and it has the Spark master, right? So if you look at the architecture of Cassandra, it's a masterless architecture, and that's why we scale linearly. And with Spark, we have a master slave architecture, which we have tightly integrated into Cassandra. So if I click on this node, I get access to the Spark master. This is typically what you would have seen if you are a Spark programmer. And here you can see there are three worker nodes. Each node on the cluster basically runs the worker. And then basically all the jobs that you submit would be listed over here. Okay. So in order to get started, so you can run your PySpark code remotely, you will first have to reach out to your operations team, and the operations team has to log into any one of the nodes where the cluster is running. And the reason they need to do is because we're going to export some configuration files, which will be placed on the jump server I showed you, right? So this is where you will extract some configuration files, put it on the jump server, and then move forward. So to do that, what your operations team has to do is they have to run this command, which is going to export the configuration file, so you can bring your own Spark and run that. So what it does is it creates a file, and I don't want to go too much into the details of this file, but it has all the configuration details of where to connect to the cluster and port and everything and all those details, right? And then the next command you need to run, the operations team has to run is locate these two files. Where is that? So this is the command you run, so you can find these files. So the operations team, all they need to do is give you a copy of BYOS properties that we generated and a jar file. So all I'm going to do is copy these two files on the jump server over here. Okay, so I'll pause the video, I'll copy it and resume the recording. So now I am logged in here onto the jump server, and on the jump server, what you can see here is I have copied the BYOS jar file, and I have copied the BYOS properties file which we generated on the cluster. And with that also, I have downloaded the DSE 6.8.7 software. So I went to download.datastax.com, and then I selected the latest software to match the version I have. And then all I did is right click, copy link, and then I go here and I say wget and paste this. So once I do this, I get this zip file, which is the Datastax software. Again, understand that on the jump box, you don't need to install anything. All I need is the binaries from the Datastax software, so I can use the Spark as a client over here, and I can connect to the cluster. Okay, so then the next step I did is just to unzip this file, and there you go. This is the folder that is created once you unzip this file. Now what I do is I'm going to go to this location. So I'm going to go inside this software, and inside this software I have basically a bin directory, the cd bin, and inside this bin directory I'm just going to run this command. And when I run this command, all I'm trying to say is use this software which I downloaded from this zip file, and then I'm passing the username password, and I'm saying, hey, get me a PySpark command prompt so I can run my PySpark code. These are the jar files which we created and copied over here. This is the property file which I'm passing it over here, and I'm saying I'm giving some additional parameters which I don't need to, but I'm just showing you that I'm allocating 2 GB of driver memory. So so right now I don't need that, but I'm just showing the couple other parameters which you can give over here. So as soon as I hit enter, now what is going to happen is it's going to authenticate and then use the jar files in the properties file, and it's going to connect to the cluster. So should take a few seconds. Yep, and there you go. So I have my PySpark prompt here. So as soon as now I start typing my PySpark code, things should start working. But before I go there, let's create a graph schema, and let's do that. Okay, so okay, so in order to create the graph schema, what I need is a studio. And to get the studio, I went to tools, and here in the tools, you have Datastax Studio. So I have downloaded the studio software, and again, there's nothing to install in this software. It's completely Java based. So you just can start it once you have the right version of Java. So I have already downloaded it, and you can see here Studio is running locally on my laptop, which is a local host 9091. And this is basically a Studio browser. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but if not, this is Studio, and this is where you have the schema browser. So right now you can see here in my graph schema, there's nothing over here, but let's create some vertices. So I'm going to create a vertex called as customer, then I'm going to create a vertex called as account, and I'm going to create a vertex called, I'm going to create an edge label that's going to connect the customer and the account, right? So let's create the first vertex. I'm going to click on, highlight it and click it. So as you can see here on the right, we have a customer vertex that shows up. Then I'm going to create another vertex, which is account. And again, as you can see here, I have defined the vertex and the properties of the vertex over here with the property columns. And then I'm going to connect these two vertices with the edge. So as you can see, customer owns an account, right? And the whole point of doing this is the team, you wanted to see how can we basically use PySpark and get the data out of graph and load it into graph frames and edit it and write it back, right? So that is what the whole idea is. So I got to create this graph schema. And once I do that, I'm going to insert some sample records into that. So let's say I'm going to insert Nikhil, my name. I'm going to insert that record. And again, this is a graph with DSE graph 6.8 and above. We give you an ability to run CQL directly on top of graph. In the previous versions, you could not. So I think that's the power and gives you an extreme performance. And then I'm going to insert savings accounts over here. And once I do the savings accounts, I'm going to basically insert some values where I'm going to connect those savings accounts with me. So now let's see how does this look like. So I'm going to run this command. If you look at it, right now what you have is I've inserted Nikhil, which is one of the vertex, and Nikhil has two accounts. One is a primary account and another is a savings account, right? And you can turn in twist the way you want to look make the look and feel as per your convenience. So now that we have this, my next step is to load this data into graph frames. Okay, and to do that, I'm going to use PySpark. So let's do that. So now let's walk through over our PySpark code, and let me show you. So if you see the first line, all I'm trying to do the import function so I can run my code. The second line, I'm creating a temporary data frame, and all I'm trying to say here is, hey, there's a table customers and it resides in the key space test. So let's take a look at it over here. I have customers table. I mean the customers vertex, and there's a table associated with it, and it's residing in this key space which is test. So that's where this resides. So I'm just going to load this table into the data frame. A couple of other commands which I'm going to show the data frame, print the schema, and then basically what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to insert a new record. So let's assume I got married, and as you saw here in this graph, this is what is me. This round circle is the vertex, and these are the two accounts that I own. So let's say if I get married, I need to have one more vertex, which is going to be my wife, and then I'm going to grant her access on my saving account, right? So that is what we're going to simulate. So I'm just going to create a new data frame, and then I'm going to merge that. So I'm doing a union of it. And once I do a union, so I'm going to add that data and then just write it back into the Cassandra table, right? So I'm just going to say the data frame write, and then I say which table do I need to insert that. So once I do that, what happens is there's vertex which would be created over here. So let's do that. So in order to do that, I'm going to copy paste this code. I'm going to go to my PySpark prompt, and then I'm going to run this code. So here you can see the table is loaded. I'm going to show, say, temp DFS for this data frame, shows the data frame, right? So now the data frame is getting executed behind the scene, and see the data frame. Let's copy the next command in the meantime. So as you can see, this is the data that has been fetched into the data frame. So once you do that, as I said, I'm creating a new data frame over here, and then the new data frame consists of the new values. And now I'm going to do a union of both these data frames. Let's see what's inside the data frame now. So as you can see, there are two records over here, and I'm going to write it back to the database. Right, so now the data has been written into the graph database. Let's view that. Let's run this command again. Now once I do that, now what you can see here is, hey, this is me, Nikhil, and this is a new vertex which I added, but now I need to grant access to my wife on my savings account, right? So to do that, let's take a look at this code again. What I'm doing is I'm now going to read the table, which is customer owns the account, right? So if you see my schema, customer owns the account. So if I click on that edge, there's a table called as customer owns the account. So let's fetch the records from that table and add a record so we can connect the savings accounts. So let's go to the PySpark prompt. The table has been loaded. Let's create a new data frame which is going to have that record, and now let's do a union of it. Let's see what happened. Okay, could be a typo. It says TFA. So okay, so I'm going to pause here. Let me see what's going wrong here. Okay, so I think there was a typo. Let's try this again. Okay, so now you have done a union and now we need to write it back to the database. So as you can see, again, simple writing it back to the customer owns account table. And let's do that. So I'm guessing the record is saved. Let's validate that. So let's run this command. And as you can see here, my wife is now connected to my savings account, right? So this is what all I wanted to show you is like how easy it is to load the data into the graph frames, manipulate it and write it back. So hope that helps. And if you have any questions, feel free to get back to me. Thank you so much.